I'll kick off and Tony's going to introduce me. So I don't know who I am.
Well, welcome to the last in our series of winter talks.
Oh.
I think it's been very useful, very interesting season. We can talk about that here at the end. Tonight we've got 2 for 1 special deal tonight. Gary's going to start by talking about the restoration of the Spalinger here, and then we're going to go on and talk about an allied subject, glue, what you do with it, that Robin's going to talk about. So I think that's enough. I think you can start.
Thank you.
As always, we'll try and record it and put it on the website. So.
Okay, right. I'm glad Glyn's not here because then I can say anything and he won't correct me. You're here. I'm just going to talk about 15 minutes on the Spalinger. I could talk for hours on it, and you know how many hours went into the restoration. We think about 2,000 hours. Graham knows, he was here for it. A lot of you have done little bits on it, and it's the biggest project I've ever done. And that's when it was new. That was in Switzerland. It's a Spalinger S21H. There was only 10 ever built. There are only now 3 in existence, we think. One is ours. One is flying in Switzerland, or it was flying in Switzerland up to a few years ago, and there was one in a museum that was hanging up, but apparently that's been taken down now and put into storage. So there's only 3. That's what it looks like. Look at the canopy. Just have a look at that picture. Ray Whittaker rebuilt the canopy completely and did a fantastic job, and you'll see what it's like now. My glamorous assistant Robbie is going to go to the next picture. That's what it looks like without the canopy on. We just come out the spray booth, and we've painted it over here and over the other side, rigged it, and it was just going to the hanger. Next one, Robin. And there it is with the canopy without the front glass. Remember the front glass we had to have specially made. Graham Saw gave me the, who's here today, gave me the contact company in Hertfordshire who make Spitfire canopies. And they did our front bubble, which was really, really difficult. Again, Ray did the plug, made the plug for it, and he saved us about 500 quid. Because making the plug is the hard bit, and actually forming the plastic on the perspex is the easy bit. So we had 2 done, and I think they charged us, Treasurer.
I can't remember now, sorry.
It's about...
Too much.
Yeah, it was a lot of money for 2 bits of perspex, but it had to be done. So we've now got a full canopy. I don't think I've got another picture on this slide, have I? Don't think so. Anyway, just while we've got that picture up, look at the glider. It is unusual. It's a 2-seater, although we think once we've had it certified by Gordon, we won't fly it ever to 2-seater because the person in the back is way behind the centre of gravity, way behind. And the weights on it are a little bit strange, aren't they? We've done some various weighing calculations with Ray in the back, me in the front, Richard, and different combinations, and it's all a little bit iffy. So if we do get a permit to fly it one day, we think it's going to be a 1-seater. So we've got some various little bits to do on it. Ed Smallbone, who's not here, is going to take a big part in the trial and the reporting of it back to the BGA, because there's not one in the country. No, there's not one ever flown in the country. This came from Switzerland to Britain. Mr. Underwood knows all about it. Where are you? There you are. Yeah. Dave Braham's house. We rescued it from.
We rescued it from Dave Braham's house, but it originally was Mike Russell got it.
For Russ Avia Aviation, was it?
Yep. Because him and Bailey went to go Switzerland to pick up.
Yeah, but it brought it back, and it never really got started.
No, it was just stored.
It was in a barn, and the 50 years in a barn, and then we got a phone call from the wife of the Dave Bray, who died, and I remember speaking to her, and I said to her, "What sort of glider is she?" She said, "I've got no idea." I said, "Has it got bent wings or straight wings?" She said, "I think they're bent." I said, "I'm on my way," because we knew it was going to be rare. We thought it was going to be a mini mower, but this is better than mini because there's so many mini mowers. They're everywhere. So this is a S21. These are rare, and of those of you who are wearing the badge, you should all be wearing the badge, and you've got. Okay. If you look at the badge of the Vintage Glider Club, it is actually a Spalinger. It is the Spalinger, and that badge has been around since Graham Saw's days in 1973, I think, the first rally, and that is the badge of the Vintage Glider Club. Right, that's introduced the glider. I'm going to flick through. I've got 200 photographs, so I'm going to show you about a dozen if that. Keep going, and I'll just stop you. Can you just flick through a few and I'll just show you a few of the, okay, one. Took the skin off, and that's the first thing we saw. This is the main spar. That's a big split. That's all been eaten. That's a hole which should have been a little inspection or a little drainage hole, 1/2 inch in diameter. Okay, next one. Right, that's inside the spar. And if you go on to the next photograph and then come back, that's what it should look like. Inside the spar, go back to the one, that's what it does look like. And there's a bit of wood that we took out. And so you can see that that wasn't just a mouse done that, that was rats. And a rat had got into the spar itself, it's gone left and right and then stopped at the next bulkhead. When we saw that, we phoned Gordon up and Hal, and we thought, this is going to be a write-off. You know, I didn't like look at that. And Gordon said, nah, it's easy. That's what he said, easy. Yeah, so we did it. And that is not an easy repair doing that. You've got to do it all from inside. You can't disturb the upper and the lower because that's all your strength. And anyway, it's done. And then can you flick through? That's how it should look. Keep going. And then, okay. Then we looked inside. Every single rib had gone. The whole lot. All the way along. Ray knows this because Ray did a lot of the work on this. I did as well. Each rib is 14 pieces of wood, including the little biscuits on the side. And you couldn't make them up in situ because we didn't want to disturb the skin on the outside. So we actually did them from inside, each one. So each rib with 14 pieces of wood took you about a week to do one because you can't do it all at once. You had to do it and then let it glue. And the glue, as Robin's going to tell you, takes 24 hours to dry before you can do the next bit. So there you are. We worked from the tip inwards, and we did a lot of scarf joints. Come a few more. There's that bit. That's the new bit we put in for the spar. Just yeah. So there you can see each rib, 14 pieces of wood, all glued up, one at a time, going down the wing, and then we recovered the skin. Scarf in all these joints. Someone was asking about scarf joints earlier on. There we go. So you're going to learn how to do scarf joints. We know how to do them now. So and keep just flick through these. Young Tom, who's one of our young apprentices, learned how to do a scarf joint. He'd never done one before, and we got him on. There's the whiz wheel I was telling you about, and careful, judicial. In Nick's day, he would never use a whiz wheel. He'd use a chisel and a sandpaper, wouldn't you? Do it all.
We did use
rotating. Yeah. No, it just to do it the old-fashioned way with the chisel was just so time-consuming. Okay, and just crack on. Yeah, we'll just go through a few of these, just to give you an idea of the joints. There'll be all new nuts and bolts. Everything, all the fittings, all went with new nuts and bolts. Ray put all those in. And just flick through a few of these. All new fittings, all off, etch primed, painted. All the main fittings were good, so we just cleaned those up. We looked inside, and they were all pretty good. Yeah, just clean. We'll go through a few of these. Again, we're working up now to the wing, replacing all the ones that have been eaten. Every hole had to be backed up, scarf joint, new skin on. And that was one wing, and we thought the second wing would be not too bad. It was actually worse when we got the second wing in. So that was about another year's work. Flick through these. If you can get to, yeah, is that Ray? I can't see it. Yeah. So yeah, you can see the wing is also, because it's a gull wing, we had to make, keep going please. Yeah, keep going. Okay, go back to that one. This was a tricky one. This is the back spar, which had been eaten right the way through. That was quite a complicated repair to do. That was like 6 or 7 bits of wood, and you'll see how it was all glued up on the next one. There you are. Not enough clamps, Nick. We've got enough clamps now, thank you very much. So, and there are all the holes. That's David doing his knitting, and yeah, lots and lots of holes. Keep going. If we can get onto the fuselage. Now you would think, they're the scarf joints. With a Swiss glider, you would assume that how it was made would be like a Swiss watch, and it wasn't at all. It was actually painfully pretty agricultural. And the fuselage was actually based around a primary. If you can imagine a primary, the fuselage was based around, just stop there, sorry. Go back, there's David, back one more. Okay, this is wing 2. So we with the young lady there. We took the skin off here, had a look, run on the, please Robin, next one on. That was the back spar, completely separated. All this was all rodent damage, and all these bits, which I've still got, these just fell off, all the biscuits, all rotten. Keep going. Yeah, Smiler, there he is. Oh, who's that? And again, we just went on. There you are. That wing was okay inside the spar, actually. It was just the, this is the back wing now. Ray Whitaker did the whole of the back wing. Every single rib had to be remade. That had all disappeared. Because it's a gull wing, we built a jig for the back to get the right profile. That was quite a job in itself. Keep going. Yeah, there you can see the back wing. Oh, it just went on and on and on. Rats, all rats droppings. So when you see the glider in the hangar, when we do get it out this summer to fly, it just looks complete. It doesn't show you the amount of work that went in. It was just, every hole you made, you just found more and more damage. Okay, just hold it there. This is, oh, yeah, can you go to the fuselage? See, I find the fuselage. Yeah, these are all the wings. They get a bit boring after a while. As I say, it's not built like a Swiss watch. This wasn't the skid. This is actually the bottom piece of wood that they made the fuselage out of. This hasn't sort of rotten. This is how they put it in. It's made out of what you would call pallet wood. And that's exactly how it was in when it was brand new. And it's dreadful. So now we've replaced it with proper aviation. I don't know what we've put on there. I think it was ash, I think, but to make it a lot strong, it's a lot stronger on the underneath. There's the fuselage, and we thought, oh, this is going to be easy. It was completely rotten, completely rotten. It just fell apart. All these bits, we just touched them, it all just fell apart. This is the underneath. This is that bit of wood here. I've took out and just spool on. It was just in a, yeah.
Bit of a mess.
It was a mess. Every single bulkhead had rotted out. So just, yeah, go through those. All the cables were all replaced. Yeah, there's that bit of wood, sorry, yeah. Yeah. New, as the new piece going in, that's that new to replace that. Then the skid went obviously on top of that, and then that all had to be. Yeah, these are the original cables. They look pretty horrible, so they were all replaced. And it just goes, it went on and on and on. And then we made up all new wood inside.
What proportion of the wood is now original?
I reckon about 50-50 now. 50-50, a lot of new wood, yeah. Yeah. You can see we put new facings on. All the bits that have slightly rotten, we just took the facings off and put new facings on. Again, clamps and stop there. The cables run through holes in the wood. Yeah, and I think I might, no, it's not there. And on the next block down, the cable had actually run through from one hole to the next. It had actually worn through the wood. And we replaced obviously all those. Keep going, Robin. Yeah. Shout up any questions as we're going through. Ah, this is a good bit. Right, this is the control column here with the ailerons. We thought, oh, we better take this out. To get that out, we had to destroy basically all the seats because this had been put in. Imagine a primary A-frame. It had been put on and then the whole glider built round the... So we had to destroy all the seats to get that out. Keep going. There it is out because the cable runs through the middle of it. Keep going. Keep going. Yeah, more patches, hook. Horrible cables, yeah. Okay, just go back one. New cables through the holes, made the new plates up.
Did you face the holes with anything?
Not really, no. The trouble is if you face them with anything, they could get... You're never going to see these again. They're all enclosed, but it ends up with more friction and things like that. So we just keep them. We did enlarge them a little bit. There you are. And this is all inside. That's basically, this is the primary, and then the skin is all built around it. Okay, keep going. And then we come on to the controls. I'd take a lot of pictures of split pins because once they're in, you never see them again. They get covered up by wood. And keep going. Again, the new control column in. Lots of yellow crap, as we call it. There's a technical name for that, I can't remember, right? Yellow shit, that's it, right. And keep going, yeah. New hook went in. Yeah, I think that's sort of getting there. New rudder on. It just went on and on. So just each little job, you know, that's a day's work, making that bit up, getting that right. Nick knows he rebuilt the boat, and you know how long it takes. It just goes on, doesn't it? So yeah, we didn't take a note of the hours, but we think it's about 2,000 hours. There's that horrible bit of wood again. All the pedals, these are the rear pedals, they're all in. And yeah, the skin going back on. I think Jeff did a few cable duplicates. Once the rear pedals and the front pedals join, the cable is actually inside, and you can never get to them again once the skin's on. So Jeff did the duplicates on that. More patches. We had to open a lot of the fuselage up to get into it. New rubber blocks. Yeah. Rear skid. Oh yeah, that's going back on. Oh, that looks horrible, doesn't it? What was that bit? I can't remember. Oh yeah, the top of the ailerons. Yeah. 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 All going back on. So anyway, it was a focal point in here in the workshop. It was a focal point for 2 years, and people, you know, would come in from week and see nothing much happening, but there was quite a lot going on. So it was 2 years of my life anyway to restore it. And there it is before we started it, HB 357, and I think that's about it, Robin, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. I've skipped through 2 years' work in 15 minutes.
Nice little easy job.
Yeah, it's a nice little easy job. I've got to thank everyone who helped me on that, because it's the biggest project I've done. And when you know you do a little job, you think, oh, that's okay, but then you've got the next one. You open up and it looked worse. And we got to a point where we thought, is it worth doing it? And fortunately, a lot of the wood we got from an old Boschen at Dunstable that got blown over. So a lot of the panels, the ply panels, which Robin's going to talk about, you got a bit there. So we reused a lot of the aviation wood from that. Any questions on the Spalinger restoration?
How can you be confident about the main stress bearing fittings?
Inspection. Well, you know, are they corroded? Are they corroded? Have they been weakened by corrosion? No, they haven't. They're just dirty and a little bit of surface rust. Clean them up and use your expertise, as Graham, you know, Graham's there. We're both senior.
They're bolting into.
Oh, they're yeah, and of course, the bottom spars go right through, so they're bolted together. So they're not going to fall off, and they're big bolts. They're big bolts. Nick?
Cables.
Yeah.
If you need to replace them, can you
Yeah.
slip them out?
No.
Pulling one out?
I would hate to change the cables now again on that. You'd have to open some woodwork up.
You are basically facing a lifetime.
Yeah, yes. That glider last flew in 1961 in Switzerland.
You replaced all the cables.
All the cables are new, brand new, every single cable. So
But there's no way of.
you can't slip them out. No, not now. They're sealed in.
Did the old cables have the thread down the middle?
Yeah, they're hemp sintered. Yeah, they were rotted out. You saw what they were like. They were horrible.
And did you proof load it?
So the old or new cables?
The wings, no, the wings.
Not really. No. It depends how far you're going to take this, aren't you? Those wings are stronger now with the amount of repairs in them than they ever were, and the fuselage is a lot stronger. Bearing in mind, this is not going to be a club glider. This is going to be a glider a bit like a Shuttleworth aeroplane that you get on a calm day. We're not probably going to winch it either. We're probably going to aerotow it gently behind a slow tug, solo. And it's to say we've rebuilt it. It's flown. You can't really use this like a K13. It's not built for that. It's built very, very lightly, but it's a lot stronger now. A lot stronger. Any more questions before I go on, Nick?
What's the status of the certification?
Yeah, great question. It's been in the hangar now, the glider, for over a year. The TG3 got in the way because we got that certified. That's now got a full C of A. Howard and Gordon are waiting. We're waiting for the permit to test the Spalinger now, and we're just waiting for that paperwork. And then we'll report back and do exactly what we did with the TG3, some test flights. I hope we don't have to spin it, because I don't really want to spin it. Someone told me, actually, I don't know how true this, David might know, you shouldn't spin a strutted glider. That's what I don't know if you've heard that or no, but strutted gliders shouldn't be subject to, you know, I don't know.
I think the certification process of the Spalinger is going to be quicker than
I hope.
because we've been through it.
I hope so. I hope we can. We've proved we can do it. We can fill out the forms. We can do all the, you know, the CS22s, the design type specifications. Exactly. So we know how to do it. Ed Smallbone's on the case as well now. So he's done these reports. He used to work for Hawker down at Dunsfold. He used to be on the flight test, and he knows how to put the reports together. So
What about the canopy?
the canopy is finished.
How?
Ray built it.
How did you do that?
He built all the laminated, all the hoops and everything by hand, and it was built from scratch near enough. We had just a bare frame, and Ray built the canopy. Yep.
And the plug for the.
And the plug to make the form, which is the hard bit. Yeah. Any further questions before? Go on.
Any idea when you're going to get the permit?
Don't know.
This year?
Yeah, I hope so. I hope summer, by the summer. Paul?
Who actually designed
A guy called Spalinger. Mr. Spalinger in Switzerland. Sorry, it's not a trick question, yeah. It's built by a guy called Lemp, and so he only built 10 of these, and then they moved on to single-seaters and things like that. You've probably seen a Spalinger single-seater, which I think they still bungee off the top of the mountains in Switzerland. So.
Pre-war.
Oh, it's pre-war. It's pre-war design. It was built in '42 during the war. Because the Swiss weren't in the war, were they? Didn't they? No, it didn't happen to them. So they were just carrying on building gliders. While
Welsh talks about flying a Spalinger in the UK.
really,
Yeah, post-war.
it'll be a single seater. It wouldn't be yeah. I'm going to hand over to Robin because I've actually spoke for 20 minutes, far too long. So Robin's going to speak for 40 minutes and no longer, and on that. Anyway, thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Robin Birch. I'm an inspector and instructor from Cotswold Gliding Club at Aston Down, and one of the things I do is play with old aeroplanes. Now, this isn't going to be a deeply technical chat. This is going to be a walk round essentially the history of glue up to date, where it's been used, and where the good bits are, and hopefully where some of the bad bits are. Okay, so what we're going to deal with is some history, where glues have come from, what's been used in aeroplanes since World War One, and then we're going to run through some different types of glue, all of which you may well trip across with some of the gliders that you could see. Some of them we're going to brush over quite quickly because they weren't used for very long and weren't used that widely, but they're still out there. We'll have a little punt about the big scary thing, which is cowrite in striker gliders, and whether it is the ticking bomb that we may think. So, rules of engagement. I will take questions as they go along, but if it gets a bit slowing down, I'll sort of push you aside and buy me a beer afterwards, and I'll talk as long as you like. Some of you will know a lot more about some areas of this lot than I do. Okay, if I do anything grossly wrong, please correct me. And I'm not aiming for death by PowerPoint, so if this is going on too long and you're getting thirsty, just ask me to pedal faster. So, start off, glue. Brief history. Started off back in the Stone Age to stick bits of stone onto a piece of wood so you could clobber somebody with it, or an animal or something, which would have made by basically heating up birch bark and taking the resin that came from it. Over time, we went into egg glues and the likes, still used today for sticking down gold leaf. In some circumstances. Fishbone and hide glues then started coming out. Genghis Khan, major user of it for making the compound bows that his riders used. Then Europe caught on
about 1500s, and we launched ourselves off into casein. The first casein factory was in Holland, I believe, around about 1600. 18th, 19th century phenolic glues were starting to be experimented with, out of which all things like bakelite and the like came. Then World War I saw the rapid development for glues for aviation, and they started where the glue was just really for positioning things. So they were made from blood, hide glues, from boiling down hide, bones, whatever, and ended up using casing. These ones would position a piece of wood or two pieces of wood, and the joint would then be bound in cloth and soaked in dope to give it a setting. But then also most of the aircraft of those days were internally braced with wire. So all the glue was doing was just keeping everything in the rough arrangement of it. Now, 1930s, it all really started taking off, because that's when industrial chemistry really started going. We get the urea formaldehydes leading on to resorcinols, redox and epoxy glues, which is basically where we are today. So these are the particular ones we're going to talk about. Casein, most aircraft from 1920 to early World War II, and quite a few during and afterwards. Cowrite WHK. This is the stuff you will have seen in Alexander Schleicher gliders up until the mid-60s. Germany used it heavily all the way through the late 30s into World War II, and then out, as I say, into the early mid-60s. Beetle glues. They did two. One which was basically licensed original Cowrite, which was Cowrite W, late 30s and World War II, and Beetle A, which was their version of WHK. You can tell the politics of the time because it's a British glue. Late 30s and World War II. Mouldrite. I've never actually seen Mouldrite, but I know it exists. Was used in World War II. Aerolite, which we will have all come across to a greater or lesser extent. Late 1930s here to present day. Aerodux, late World War II to present day. Redux, early World War II, as far as gliders are concerned, to the mid-1960s. You can still buy it, it's still used a lot, but there aren't that many gliders that have used it. Yes, absolutely. Phenolics everywhere, 1930s to date. The main glue, certainly in Germany during World War II and here afterwards for sticking plywood together, are phenolic resins. So let's run through them. Casein. Graham, if I get this wrong, you know much more about casein than I do. It's easy to use. It's a one-part glue, comes as a powder, mix it with water, apply, clamp, leave. Okay? It's very strong. It's a good wood glue. Pretty much all aviation from 1920s used it. It's based on milk proteins. You basically get the curds as you separate milk into curds and whey and process it. Now, the big gotcha is that it's open to microbial attack. And if you keep it in high humidity or repeated cyclings of humidity, unprotected, it just comes apart. There are issues over repairing it due to alkalinity, because it's basically an alkaline substance. Most of the synthetic glues have acidic hardeners, and so the hardener of the glue you put on is neutralised by the hardener of the Cowrite that's on there, and if you get the two mixed up, the Cowrite goes west as well. Now, Hans Jakob in his workshop books suggests that if you're going to repair casein with a more modern glue, you have to completely remove the casein, which will quite often end up with completely removing the wood. And the BGA suggest several coats of aerolite hardener, which is an acid based on formic acid, to neutralise it, and then you can glue it. But if, when it's first used, it's protected with, you mix a fungicide in with the glue, and it's protected with a paint or a varnish over it and it's stored properly, it's a very good long-lasting glue that gets stronger as time goes on, and there's a lot of good examples still around. Now, failures. Thank you, David. This is a kite one where you can see the glue has just basically completely broken down and due to microbial attack. It goes white, cheesy, and it just comes apart. Literally, it just stops gluing. It reverts to what it's made out of, end of. But conversely, that's a de Havilland 10 built in 1918. It's a rib that Dave has kicking around in amongst his various bits and bobs, and it's quite happy. It's as strong as the day it was made, because it's been kept reasonably. Same here, 1947 Hawkridge Dagling. This rib was kept reasonably well. The glue's still good. Now, moving on from casing. The first synthetic glues that were used widely were from a family called urea formaldehydes. Originally developed all across Europe and America as furniture glues. The original one is Cowrite W. It had no gap filling properties whatsoever, which meant that the joints had to be very tight, so your woodwork had to be precise and your clamping had to be precise. If you got any degree of separation, the glue would then crystallise as it moved, as it cured, and so you get a very weak joint because it's just full of cracks. So the company who developed them, in fact, a guy called Hans Klemm, because it's quite, you also hear it called Klemm glue, basically mixed the glue with ground bakelite. And so if you look in a lot of German gliders during the 30s, and that round, that's a 1950s Grunau Baby 2 rudder rib. It's stuck together with brown bakelite. It's quite happy, thank you very much. He put ground bakelite in there. There's two types you see, a brown and a blonde type. The blonde's exactly the same as the brown. He just used a different coloured bakelite to fill the glue, and it inhibits the crystallisation. The bakelite takes no part in the joint other than to stop the cracks spreading. It's a bit like gravel in concrete. It's still not fantastic gap filling because it'll do up to 0.5 millimetre, for which most things is perfectly good. You use an acidic hardener which is coloured red to show where used, and it's deliberately coloured red so you can see where the hardener's been put on. As I said, it's also known as Klemm glue. Now, the problem with Cowrite is its conditions of use are very critical. It's got a comparatively narrow temperature range under which it will cure properly. You've got to mix it properly, and you've got to leave it to stand, and then make sure that no skins form on it, and always remove that. You've got to prepare the joints properly, and you've got to make the joints properly and only clamp them by the appropriate mount. You can't put them together and squeeze the bejesus out of them. Well-made Cowrite joints work. There's plenty of gliders around from the 30s, 40s, 50s and 60s, all glued together with Cowrite, that work very well. There's an awful lot of furniture in Germany that dates from the 1930s and it hasn't fallen to pieces yet. But it's very prone to problems in that area. BGA has carried out a series of spar tests that's asked inspectors to do, and also they've had universities bend spars from gliders which have been broken up because of glue failure. They have not found a spar that's failed, because if the spars are all made in the factory under reasonable conditions, and they have all ended up as strong as they were supposed to be. Now, Cowrite failures, two different types here. We've got blonde and brown. This is a KA2, and you can see down here this web has started to come away from the stick there. These bits are all right, but this one started to go. Here, there's blonde glue, and you can see that it's cracking all the way around here. There's further cracking beyond these points, and that's fairly typical of where the joints don't work. However, that's a late production K6E. It's got aeroducts holding the skins on, but all the ribs are built out of blonde cowrite. It's in perfect working order, despite the fact that the reason you can see in there is that they've tried flying the glider through a tree. So that's the tip that they've got left that they're looking down inside. So it's had a huge shock load, but they're fine. Don't know. We can only make suppositions of why. Did, as time go on, Schleichers tighten up on their use of the glue? A lot of the later Schleicher gliders have been painted with yellow varnish, so they've been dipped with Rhodius varnish or whatever.
The ribs in the Schleicher factory in the local village of Poppenhausen, the ribs were given out to the ladies in the village to make the ribs. That may be why they used different glue in their houses rather than aero ducts, which the normal people wouldn't know how to mix up properly. So I've got a feeling that's why.
That's one. It's possibly one of the reasons. Yeah.
Piecework, the lady used to get paid to make the ribs.
Now, there's all sorts of theories about why cowrite had problems or has problems. There's potentially issues around clamping and preparation of harders. Note the lack of penetration on some of those joints. Also, not too much of evidence of red hardener, because when the red hardener slaps around the place, it is red. You can see it everywhere. The non-aviation hardener, which was actually identical to the aviation one, is actually clear. So there is a question, were they using the wrong hardener? The K6E has got a varnish coat internally. The other one is that there is a worry about the preparation of the plywood. Examination of some of the joints by some glue experts have basically found a lot of wax in there. For those of you who don't know, plywood is made by stacking maybe 100 sets of plywood with a release agent between them and squeezing the hell out of it in a big steam heated press, and the glue cures. The release agents to make sure the ply sheets separate, which is why before you glue ply you sand it, because you're taking off that release agent layer, because it otherwise will prevent penetration of glue. And there is a good chance an awful lot of the ply that's in some of the Schleicher gliders, especially the ones that have suffered from glue failure, haven't had their ply properly prepared. So, moving on, beetle cement. Some people have heard of it, some people haven't. The Beetle Cement Company is an offshoot of a plastics company in the East Midlands, somewhere like that, who through the 1930s made Art Deco plastic bowls and things. The things you see from the sort of 30s and 40s, that's lots of wavy, different coloured plastics. That'll be them. And they produced Beetle W as a licensed agent of the company producing cowrite. They then decided, now whether this was just something they decided or whether it was Europe was getting a little bit ready for war, read that book. We have now produced this totally English glue from an English company, which was basically a rip-off of cowrite WHK. Beetle glue has got 3 different hardeners, and there's orange, there's yellow, and there's white, and so that will colour the wood around where the Beetle glue's been used. They're just different speeds, going from fast through to slow in the degree of hardener. Beetle A had 2 hardeners, purple or brown, fast and slow. If you do run across Beetle A, that can be confusing with aerolite, because most of the time aerolite was used. The main hardener for aerolite was also purple, so don't rely on that as an identifier that it's that particular glue. Used during World War II, but by the end of World War II, the beetle cement had pretty much vanished. But it will turn up in parts produced in Slingsby Cadets and things like that, where whichever company, Hearns or Opfers or whatever, who were building bits for them, had glued lots of things together with whatever they could glue they could lay their hands on. Now, as I say, they were used with lots of other glues at the same time, so you could get a cadet, say, from the mid-war production that had been used with some moldrite, aerolite, whatever, all by the same company, all at the same time. So don't hope that everything's always built out of the same stuff. Largely out of use by the end of World War II. So there's only a limited number of things you're going to find it in. Perversely, if you get an early mosquito from when they'd stopped using casing, they used beetle A for a little while to glue those together. Aerolite. Now this is the one which you will see a lot of. Developed by Norman de Bruyn in the early mid-1930s, who was the owner of Aero Research Limited at Duxford. Now we'll come across him later on. It's a two-part urea formaldehyde. Chemically, it's pretty much identical to cowrite. It's much easier to use. It's not as sensitive to temperature and humidity and the like as cowrite is. Don't know why, but it isn't. And it effectively displaced casein and beetle W, used fairly rapidly after the aviation industry took it up in Mosquito, and were used in the Mosquito all the way through to the end of its production life. Horses, Hamel cars, Slingsby then took it on, Elliott's standard wood glue, and most of their post-war gliders used it. Glue comes as a powder. You mix it with water, you then store it for 24 hours before you use it, and whatever. Good joint preparation is required. Like cowrite WHK, it'll do a little bit of gap filling, but not much. You've got to have nice joints. Uses an acidic hardener, smells like ants, if you've ever used it. 3 speeds originally, again coloured on the hardener. Amber, green and purple from fast to slow. The most common one is purple, and if you look at, where's the other bit I had? I'll find it in a moment. That one. If you pass that round, that's a wing done in Aeroducts with a purple hardener, and you can see the splashes of wood, sort of a lilac colour around some of the joints. Now, aerolite's still completely available. The only problem with it is it only does a single speed hardener these days, which is a sort of creamy colour. And from speaking to a friend of mine who's been involved in trying to rebuild a Book of Bestman, if you've got to do a big area, it isn't slow enough, because the stuff at the beginning is going off by the time you're sticking the back end of the big bit of ply on that you're putting on. Aeroducts. We all know Aeroducts. 2-part resorcinol glue. Dark brown and shiny. It's waterproof, gap filling. It's more expensive by Aerolite, but it works. The only downside in my thing about Aeroducts is it goes everywhere and you end up covered with this sticky brown gloop. It's water soluble, so you can wash it off, but it is messy. In use since late World War II, came into prominence mid-late 60s. Used widely in home-built aircraft, sailing boats. A lot of when wooden masts were the thing to have for a sailing dinghy. I used to sail a thing called a National Red Wing, which is a beautiful piece of mahogany, teak and spruce. And the masts were about a 5-piece lamination, length of this here to the front door. in spruce, all made with aeroducts. It's used in conjunction with other glues such as Cowrite in later production Schleicher gliders, where the ribs have, as Gary says, been built by the outworkers, and then the factory have used aeroducts to put the skins on, which is a job Aerodux is very good at because it's gut filling and it's got quite a long work time before it cures. And it's generally, unless you've got to use for one reason or another something else, it's the glue of choice when you're putting gliders together in the UK. Redux. Developed mid-World War II to glue metal to wood and metal to metal. It was used in aircraft such as the de Havilland Hornet to stick the spars together, which were a composite wood-metal structure, and to stick the metal lower wing skins to the ribs and the upper part of the wing, which were all wood. And it's a phenolic resin, put it on as a liquid, and you then cover that with a hardener, which is usually a powder. You let it stand for a while, you stick it all together and you cook it. Which is the bit that really rules it out for hobby use or the sort of things we do, because you've got to cook it up to that sort of joint pressure, clamping it, and that sort of temperature for the cook it for, which we don't really have the ovens to put an entire wing into. However, the reason I brought it up here is that Dart wing spars and the Ollie 460 series, like 463s and all the rest of it, which have got combined wood and aluminium spars or Dural spars, they're stuck together with Redux. The warning about them is if you're working on one of those, don't use aerolite near them, because the acidic hardener will attack that and all of a sudden your spar comes to pieces. Not good. However, the glue itself, if it's in there and stuck, as Gary says, a large part of the commercial jet fleet up until the mid-late 70s had major amounts of it stuck together with Redux. It's a very good glue. I think that, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong here, Morgans on their newer cars have an aluminium folded sheet chassis which is stuck, which is all basically glued together, and that's glued together with a variety of this. Odds and sods. Right, for most of these glues, putting aside the German ones and casing, we've got one person to thank. He did it all. A guy called Norman de Bruin, who I've mentioned earlier, and he's responsible for aerolite, aerodux, Fiberlam, which is basically a phenolic reinforced fibre sheet, which was then converted into honeycomb structures with other things stuck on it. He did Redux and he did aerolite, araldite. He also did some of the first composite structures. He started off in this game in the early 1930s using phenolic flax reinforced phenol to do cloths to reinforce propeller blades for variable pitch props. And he then went on to produce a reinforced material which was called Gordon aerolite, I think, which was an aerolite resin reinforced again with a mixture of, some of them were flax and some of them were cotton, out of which they produced a Spitfire fuselage and load tested it and everything and found that it was perfectly okay, in case we couldn't get enough aluminium to produce the normal aircraft. For those of you who are interested, Miles Magister tailplanes, a large amount of those is produced from Fiberlam. From Gordon aerolite. He sold the company to Sieber Geigy in 1947, which is why we generally associate Sieber Geigy with these glues, because they're the people who, especially if you're reasonably old, who have through most of their life sold them. But he must have been good at his job, because they kept him on as the managing director until about 1960. Now, Cowrite, ticking bomb. There's been a lot of cowrite glue failure. We've all seen it, we've all repaired some of it, we've all chopped some of it up. So many Schleicher gliders have been scrapped or repaired, and there's no reason why others wouldn't suffer this. There have been a number of accidents. Only one is definitely down to glue failure. All the others are thought to have been down to glue failure because there were other things wrong with the aeroplane. One that's down to glue failure is a two-seater in Hungary a few years ago, where the D-box on one elevator came to pieces. And so they ended up flying it round on one half of the elevator and putting it back down on the ground again. And it was found that, yeah, it hadn't been looked after very well, and they hadn't done any of our glue inspections, but yeah, that was glue failure, which led to a bit of a drive on changing the inspections for that. So, generally, older cowrite appears to have a lot of issues, but these are probably the side effects of use or the way it's been applied or whatever, rather than the glue itself. Certainly the poor joint preparation is almost certainly a problem with it, and poor conditions. Supposed rather than known, because one of the problems with all of this is Schleichers didn't keep very good records, bless them, on what glues they used on what, how they used it or anything. So you can't really sit down and look at the process records and go, you got a problem here. New cowrite appears to last better. You look at the later K6Es and things like that, they don't seem to suffer from glue failure. The K14s don't. And so
I think a lot of it is, like you say, K13s have in the pub. Before we did our glue inspections, a lot of these K13s were left out in the wet, put away in wet tea hangers.
Yep.
You know, I went down to Watershare Park at Dover and saw how they were keeping them.
Oh God, yes.
In leaky tea hangers. They just fell apart, don't they? They just fall apart.
Yeah, they do. And the good part about all of this is, as far as Schleichers are concerned, as far as both the ARSA and the CAA are concerned, we are the state of the art in terms of inspecting these damn things and culling out the bad stuff. As a result, the number of failures, I'll split that away from the occasional that bit's failed, as opposed to we take this aeroplane out and burn it, appear to be disappearing as we have culled the bad airframes, which implies that if the thing's been built properly in the first place, it's generally okay. So verdict, it's a good glue when it's used properly and kept in a good environment. And I don't think the importance of that was realised when it was first used. So if you've got a well stuck together good cowrite aeroplane, you'll probably have a well stuck together good cowrite aeroplane for the rest of its life. And it's probably not going to fall to pieces except maybe in just one or two bits which can be fixed. Now, I've kind of danced round this. The whole point of me talking about this is you guys are going to be playing with old gliders. It's what you do. It's what I do. So where are you going to come across these glues? Casing. Anything and everything built pre-1935. British up to gliders up till just prior to the beginning of World War II, and in British light aircraft during and after World War II. The reason there aren't very many Percival and Miles aircraft around now is there was a big cull of them in the 1950s, partly due to casing glue failure and partly due to poor manufacture. The two supplemented each other. Cowrite W and WHK. You won't see much W because it didn't, they brought WHK along fairly quickly, but you'll see WHK, German increasing after 1935 and until the 1970s. The only reason it runs out in the 1970s is that they stopped producing wooden gliders. Interestingly, the SHK, which is a mid-60s glider that Schempp produced, uses a variant of araldite to stick it together. The There's some British here and there, as I've mentioned, but it's more likely to be Beetle W and Beetle A, and there won't be a lot of it about, because most of the gliders that were produced in the Second World War were troop-carrying gliders, horses, Hamilcars, whatever, and they will have been made without aerolite. So there's some cadets and similar things out there, potentially. Beetle W, Beetle A, as I said, all pre and all World War II, along with other glues such as aerolite and mouldrite. The only reason I bring mouldrite up is there is a report that Frank Irvine produced in the 1960s about glues in gliders, and he refers to it. So I've never seen mouldrite, I've never found a spec sheet for it or anything, but it's potentially out there. Aerolite, mid-World War II to mid-1960s, this is in production. It was used and is still used in home-built aircraft. Go to the LAA, they're still advising people on how to use aerolite. All Slingsby's and Elliots, apart from in the area of the spars, in metal reinforced spars. Pretty much any wooden glider that's got anything to do with this country will be aerolite. Redux, aluminium reinforced spars in darts and 460s. I don't know of anything else that used them, though somebody will hold up their hand at some stage and say, so there might be some more up it, but that's where it will mostly turn up. Aerodux, later Schleicher wooden gliders, randomly, because we don't know. If you ask, speak to Gordon when he was doing the maintenance here, Lasham went to Schleicher's to buy some K13s. We want them done in Aerodux. Yes, sir, signed. They came back, and when they turned up, half of them were made out of cowrite. So Schleicher's don't actually know what they've used. And a lot of repairs. The only reason it hasn't really been used in production stuff here is that we stopped making wooden gliders, as did everybody, and everything's been epoxy of some form or another with a composite structure. The States, your TG3, is stuck together with a urea formaldehyde glue, which looks actually very much like aerolite, and which is why it was fairly simple to get it signed off once we'd found that out. And that's pretty much it. These are all the people who've helped. There's some very good glue articles in old copies of the VGC comic from 2015. There was a series of 3 or 4 which pretty much said what I've said here. Neil Pfeiffer in the States provided some of the photographs for those, because I ripped them out of one of his articles. David Underwood provided the articles and some of the bits of wood that have been floating around. BGA Standard Robust Gliders. For those of you who don't know about this, this is a book that the BGA wrote in the 1960s, and it's still around, which basically describes how to use wood glues. AP2662A, for the real anoraks amongst you. Anybody know what that is? Yeah, well done, there's one. This was the RAF standard manual of how to repair an aeroplane. So, yeah, they're quite rare these days, I'd hang on to it. And it covers everything, from wood to metal to repairing radomes, the whole lot. But it's a very good book. And that one was written to replace that because the RAF had stopped using it and moved on to something else. The VSA translation of the last version of Hans Jacob's book is brilliant and covers glues, especially cowrite, very, very well. Wikipedia, there's billions of articles on it, all of which all the ones I've found look quite good. I say there's lots of internet forums out of that. Caveat, some of them are rubbish. And also Jean Munn in the Shuttleworth collection provided me with a load of information on blood glues and similar. So all of those people have contributed. What I've said, there's nothing new. It's all out there to be got, but all I've done is put it together in one place. Right, that's it, done. And it's 5 to opening time. You're happy?
Thank you very much. Fascinating talk.
No,
Thank you.
no problem.
So,
Anytime.
thank you very much. So
Right.
that completes our talks for this winter. It was really an experiment, but I think it's been very successful, and we'll try to do it again next year. The talks are appearing on the website, and this one will as well, I think, won't it? So you can find it on there, and certainly go through Robin's one in more detail if you'd like.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's good. And we'll have another season next year. And if you have ideas for what we should be talking about, or would like to give a talk, would like to propose somebody to give a talk, then please let me know.
I propose Graham Shaw to give a talk.
Yeah.
All of them, all of them.
So we'll have another season next year. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Cheers.